Hello and welcome to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, the show where curiosity meets the open road. I'm your host Alasdair, and I invite you to join me as we explore the world through travel, nature, getting outside, and the power of learning. Each episode, we will dive into stories from inspiring educators, adventurers, and global citizens who are reshaping what it means to learn, whether it's in a classroom, on a mountain trail, or even halfway across the world. From backpacking trips that change your perspective to educational journeys that transform communities, we will cover it all. So pack your curiosity, lace up your boots, and let's discover how the world teaches us, one step, one story, one adventure at a time. Since 1970, Whole Earth Provision Company has been the Texas outfitter for side quests big and small. Whether you're gearing up for the open road, chasing a trailhead, or hunting for that just right gift, they have got you covered. Think durable clothing, shoes that will actually go the distance, gear that's road trip ready, and books, puzzles, and toys that will spark wonder at every age. You'll find Whole Earth in Dallas, Austin, Houston, and San Antonio, or anytime online at wholeearthprovision.com. And hey, because you're rolling with the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, here's a little extra love. Use the code OutdoorsyyEDU for 20% off your next adventure at Whole Earth. And on this week's episode of the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, we have a very special guest, my good friend Derick Lugo. You may know him better as Mr. Fabulous Fab. Hopefully you've read his first book, The Unlikely Thru Hiker. Derick, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you, Alistair?
Yeah, man, doing very well. We've known each other for, I don't know, a few years
Yeah.
anyway. Um, and we've got together. I was thinking about this morning. We went for a hike in Alabama. We hung out trail days in Virginia, then Oregon. So we're kind of doing our own little tour of the country where we hang out at random places.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I think we connected. I did a talk for one of your classes, right?
yeah, you've done that. I mean, that's got to have been maybe 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then we started following each other on social media. So yeah.
yeah, it's been super awesome. Well, for those people who don't know much about you or who you are, why don't you tell the audience who is Derick, who is Mr. Fabulous?
What you because you don't know? Wait, you can't do the intro? No, I'm kidding.
That's right. That's right. I can't do it as well as you.
So my name is Derick Lugo. I'm the author of The Unlikely Thru Hiker and the upcoming book, A Fabulous Thru Hiker. I'm from New York City, so my first book is about me having zero experience with the outdoors. And the first time I ever hiked was when I was on the Appalachian Trail. I didn't even know if I liked hiking. I just saw it as a challenge, and luckily I fell in love with it, and it changed not only my life but my career path.
Yeah, I think like myself, we were both inspired by A Walk in the Woods, the infamous, famous. I think it's a wonderful book, but the Bill Bryson
Yeah,
novel.
I mean it. I will say because a lot of thru hikers, aren't like they discover, especially years ago,
Hmm.
discovered that, and that's what happened with me. Like I discovered the AT through A Walk in the Woods, and it's a good read. It's
Yeah,
fun, hilarious, and as a book, I love it. But as far as being like the book for the AT, a lot of thru hikers are like, nah, it's not
right.
really the book. But I will say. It's a it's I'm a big reader, and it's a great read. So yeah, it was how I was introduced to the AT, but the only thing I knew about the AT was what Bill Bryson had added in the book, that it was, a through hike from a long distance hike from Georgia to Maine, 14 states, and that was basically it. And then when I did a little bit of research, when to start, when not to start, got some of my gear and stuff. That's all I knew.
Yeah, I don't think, for me, I love it because I don't think it was ever intended to be a definitive guide.
I
Like,
don't think he
yeah,
wanted. I don't think he thought it
no,
would be what it. Like it was just
Right.
a funny story that he had to share,
Yeah.
but I don't think he imagined that it would be the book that everyone would turn to, especially in the beginning. Nowadays, there's so many other books they can read, like the Unlikely Thru Hiker. But
Indeed. Yeah.
shameless plug.
Right.
But yeah, he's a great writer, and
Yeah.
in fact, when I wrote my first book, I wanted my book to be as humorous as his. I just went a different direction because he wasn't always positive about the AT, and I
Hmm.
wanted to be positive because I wasn't going to inspire anyone to do anything. Not that I was trying to get people to through hike, but I wanted to people to like step out, like what I did, step out of your comfort zone, do something out of the ordinary, or live a dream you didn't know you had. So that was ultimately what I wanted to do. Just share my story, and people can take it and hopefully be inspired, you know.
Yeah, that's when I read your book. I mean, that's when we first connected was when I bought your book. So I didn't really know you at the time, but read the book, and for me, it made the outdoors accessible.
Hmm.
It's a bit like in my head, like if you go to the gym and you see, Johnny Six Pack lifting 300 pounds, and you're like, this
Can't
isn't for
relate.
me. This too big. Yeah, it's not for me.
You
To
can't
me,
relate.
it made it relatable, accessible. You don't have to have $8,000 worth of gear and have all this experience. You can just give it a shot.
And
You know?
that's what I still
Yeah.
want people to know is that now, okay, now I went from having zero experience, knowing nothing about the outdoors, to now I'm writing nonstop about it and doing talks about the outdoors and all these other trails. But I want people to know that I haven't changed. I'm still that
Right.
same person. I just have a little bit more experience. So when you still read my stories, you're gonna read the downs, you're gonna read the ups, the key for me is that I'm human. We're all human, and I'm gonna get knocked down. But the key part is how do I react after that? What am I gonna do when I get knocked down? Am I gonna stay down or I'm gonna get up and move forward and do it in a way where it's again, I try to keep it as positive as possible, but I want people to see that hey, I got knocked down. There's moments where I'm like, man, what is happening? There's several moments in every trail where I thought this could be it for me, you know,
I'm
and
sure.
I wanted people to see that although that popped in my head, I was thinking, how do I get out of this? You know, so quickly you get that thought in your head, the next thought should be, how do I get out of this? And then you get out of it and you move on and it becomes a type of fun. It could be type one, two, or three, you know?
Right.
And those are normally three where you're like, I never want to do it again, you know?
Right. This is a one and done situation.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't want to actually, I think when you do interviews, people want to dive into your hiking a lot because that's what everyone wants to know about. It's where people know you from. And while we're going to touch on that, I'm sure, throughout the interview, I want people to read your book. That's the best way to find out about, the hiking. But before, you mentioned that you hadn't really been into hiking. You were the manager of a bar, you did construction. I mean, you were not in the outdoor industry at all. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I worked at
Yeah.
most of my life I worked in New York City. I was a bar back and became a bartender. I've done some carpentry in Pennsylvania. I did some in when I lived in Italy, some in New York. I come from a family where we're just like really good with our hands.
Hmm.
So yeah, I would try a bunch of things and try to be really good at them. And I feel like with anything that I focus on, I try to, exceed what people expect. And I feel like I could have had a career in a bunch of different things. And I just would like carpet. I love again working with my hands. I love that. That's a passion of mine.
Hmm.
But ultimately, telling stories was the one that won out. And I feel like with carpentry, I can do it for myself, but with writing. I do it for myself and others. I feel like I can reach more people and hopefully people can get something out of what I'm sharing with them.
Yeah, so as most people listening to this will know, I'm in education. I have been my whole career in a couple of different capacities. But one fairly common thread is a lot of teachers feel they have a book in them, whether that's a kindergarten book or, middle schoolers, right? Because they know kids and they know what works and they know what they want. 99.9% of people never do anything with that. So I'd love to talk to you about sort of post hike. There must have been some point where you thought maybe it was before you started hiking, maybe I'll write this down, or maybe it was during the hike or after the hike. When did that become an idea and then go from just an idea to actually this might be something I do with my life?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Before I through hiked the AT, I've written a bit. I've written short stories. I have several manuscripts, but none of them were published. It was one of those things where I was just writing just to write while I worked full time in New York City. But it was something that I liked to do. When I did the AT, halfway through it, people were just coming up to me and saying, "You need to write your story." For several reasons. One, the year I through hiked the AT in 2012, they weren't really, and I didn't notice until people were coming up to me and telling me, because I'm from New York City, the mixing pot of the world. But people were coming up to me saying, "Hey, we're glad you're out here. Thank you for coming, being out here. There's not many people of color out here." Because at first I was like, "Well, I'm glad you're out here too," not understanding what they were saying.
Right, right.
But they were like, no, there's not many people of color out here, which I found kind of sad and didn't really, I didn't, I just didn't understand why that was a thing. So then that was one factor. And there was another factor where I was like my friend said in my book, Nina, she's like, "You're the most metrosexual black man in New York City." Because I wanted to always have designer clothes. I had to look fresh. I shave, twist my locks, like
Right.
it was a city thing for me, I just, and maybe because, I don't know, maybe because I was in my 20s, I don't know. But, um, but when I got on the trail, that kind of changed a bit. And when people started sharing that it was nice to have someone different on the trail, I knew that this was something I wanted to share with people. And once others heard that I was a writer, they were like, "Dude, you gotta write a book. You gotta write a book." And I've heard stories of other people writing books, and they haven't been successful. Obviously, I knew about Walk in the Woods, but and there's others that were pretty successful. But I didn't want my book to be a journal. I wanted to come out like
Right.
I didn't want it to read like someone was like following me every day, but we're like I had oatmeal for breakfast and I did 10 miles and today was sunny and it just didn't it's not interesting for me.
Right.
So the key point when I had decided that I wanted to write about it halfway through my through hike, I said, okay, I'm going to take extra notes because I write a journal even before that. I've been writing journals since I was a teenager in a journal. And decided I would take more notes, be more a bit more detailed with my journal and take more photos and stuff like that. And once I did that, then I knew what I had to be able to do. And the key is to be able to share a story and still make it sound interesting. And
Right.
I knew I was pretty good at sharing stories. We sit around a campfire and share stories, and I knew I had that going for me, but I wasn't sure if I can translate that into paper, into print,
Right.
words like that people could read. And but I said, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to go for it. And this was the first time that I wrote something that I knew I was going to get published. I didn't know how I was going to do it.
But
I
you
just
just
knew.
knew.
I just knew. So I didn't
Yeah.
worry about how to market it, how to get it, how to find a publisher. I didn't know. I didn't worry about that until I wrote the book, the manuscript at least, because I didn't want those other things that I would have to deal with in the future to affect the story I want to share. And I wanted to just keep going at it nonstop until I was done, and then I would move on from there.
I love it. So when you finish the trail, like I said, I don't say too much about it because I want people to read your book because you tell the
You
story
can.
so much better than I do. But you get off the trail, let's say you write your manuscript. I'd love for you to share, like I said, we have listeners and lots of people who feel, I've got a story to tell. I've got a book in me, whether that's a book for kindergarteners or, 1,000-page blockbuster. The people feel they have a book in them. I certainly have no idea what the process is like from having an idea, putting ideas on paper to having your book on a shelf in a local bookstore. Could you kind of talk us through that process? What it is you did to make the Unlikely Thru Hiker a reality?
Yeah, I'll share my process. I actually had a couple that I approached differently for each book. So, for my first book, when I finished the Appalachian Trail, I wasn't working. I didn't have a job. I had already, even before the AT, I was working, but kind of like I was already like 2 or 3 months where I wasn't working, and I decided I'm going to extend that a bit longer to do the AT. So that was one thing that was different with the first book than the second one. So the first one, since I wasn't working, I said, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this time that I have before I have to start earning some money and paying bills.
Hmm.
So I had 3 months. I finished the AT in September, middle September. In October, I was able to, a friend of mine let me stay at a cabin for 3 months for the winter. So from October, November, December, for 3 months, I was able to write nonstop with no distraction. So I was in a cabin, didn't have Wi-Fi. I would have to ride a bike to a town, which was really close to get Wi-Fi, which I really liked. So the first process was I decided since I have this time, I'm going to every day get up early and write. It started at like 500 words a day. Then it went up to 1,000. Then it went to 1,500 as I continued writing and I was progressing. So I wouldn't stop writing. I would turn off my phone. If my brain is a little, it goes all over the place. Like most people, you get distracted, but it wasn't as distracted as if I was in New York. So I would have a piece of paper next to my laptop. And if something popped in my head that was really like, I need to get it done, because it's always like that. When you're
Hmm.
sitting down and you want to focus on something productive, something else pops up and you just squirreled.
Always, always, yeah.
So what I do is I'll write it down. And once I write it down, it's out of my mind. It's like, okay, I'll take care of that. I'm not going to forget it. It's written down. So I would write it down. So then I just set whatever program you have, you should be able to see a word count. And I started with 500, ended up with like 1,500 words a day. And sometimes I would go until 12, sometimes 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There was times where I was towards the end, I was done by 10, in the morning, depending on
Hmm.
what time I woke up. So I would keep doing that because I knew that I wasn't going to finish a book in 3 months. But I wanted to start a routine, and that's the key with anything. You want to start a habit, you want to start a routine. If you don't have that routine, it's not gonna, it's gonna be a struggle. You're gonna be saying for years. I had a friend when I was writing my first book. She said, "Yeah, I know someone that's been working on this book for 25 years." I said, "I'm not going to be working on this book for
Right,
25 years, okay? I may be working on it for a few years, but not 25 years."
right.
So I knew I had to change it up. I couldn't treat this manuscript like I treated my other ones. It had to be something that I knew was going to get published.
Hmm.
And so that was my approach for the first one. The second one was different. The second one was 3 years ago when I finished hiking the Continental Divide Trail. By then, my first book was out. It got some momentum. People knew about the book and a bit about me. So I wasn't like, I didn't go into this book being an unknown. Like, I got off the trail and quickly I was being asked to do certain talks and stuff like that. So I really didn't have the time. I couldn't sit down and do 1,500 words a day. So I had to adjust a bit, and I decided, well, since I can't do a word count, I'll do time. So I'll set a timer and do a half hour every day I think I
Hmm.
started like 20 minutes, and then it went 20 minutes, it went 45 minutes, then it went an hour. So I did it by time. So I would write, keep writing, and also during for both processes, when I write, and I've learned this, I forgot where I got this from, and it's so helpful. When you write, don't worry about spelling, don't worry about punctuation or grammar or the format. Don't become like, don't procrastinate with little things like that, because that's
Hmm.
ultimately what you're doing. You're procrastinating. Forget about all that. Just put down the words, put down your thoughts, whatever. If the story is flowing, just type it. It's not gonna look pretty. Okay.
Right.
My first draft is like a puzzle. There's times where I had one piece of the chapter in the beginning, and then another piece was on a different chapter, and then I ended up piecing them together. The key is not to have a pretty manuscript. The key is to have those words down, even if it looks like mumbo jumbo. Like
Hmm.
eventually, if you're writing some, obviously, when you're writing, you're going to try to want to have some kind of I don't want to say structure, because it's ultimately what you're doing is you're writing a story, and the story should follow, what your thinking pattern. But there's times where I've had paragraphs. I'm like, I don't know where this belongs. I don't remember. But you set that aside. It's written, and eventually it'll come back to you, which it normally does when I'm working on a project for a long period of time. So the key is just to get there and write. So I would write for 20, and then ended up being I'm writing the same amount of time I was writing when I first did my first book. So I would do an hour, and then it would go 5 hours, 6 hours. So depending on where I was during it, if I had a talk or if I didn't. But the key is always to have it in the back of your mind that this needs to get published. This is something that I really want people to see. If it's your
Right.
goal, you
Yeah.
could write a poem and say, I don't want anyone to see it. It's fine. But the key is to write every day, because writing is a craft. And in order for you to polish your craft to be good at it, you have to do it every day. One of the things I get from when I do book signings or book events, I'll get young writers that come up to me and they say, "Hey, can you just give me any kind of advice on writing?" And the way I respond is I'll ask them a question. I go, "Hey, are you writing every day?" And I would say the majority of the time, I would say 90% of the time, if not higher than that, 95% of the time, they say no.
Hmm.
And I said, "Why don't we start with that? Because whatever I give you right now, and I can draw some good stuff for you to kind of follow, at least a guideline that helped me. And you could take pieces
Hmm.
of whatever, because I'm not saying everything that I do is going to work for you, but if you could take something, then that would be, great. But start with writing every day, whatever that entails. If it's just you writing a few sentences, that's you writing. But it has to be something every day. If you want to just write in your journal, write in your journal. At this point, I write in my journal every morning, and then I'll write whatever project I'm working on, and then I'll write at night in my journal. It's just something I've always done since I was a teenager. So the key is just to whatever you need to do to sit down and write. I understand everyone is different. People have families, you have kids, or I think your kids are grown now, so I think you got a little bit more freedom. But if you
Right.
have kids, just take a moment, even if it's 15 minutes to write. You know why? Because that 15 minutes of you writing something is going to feel so good. Because ultimately, if you want to be a writer and you're not writing every day, you're thinking, wish I was writing. I wish I was writing. I wish I
Hmm.
was writing. And it's daunting. It's something that you don't want there. Like if I'm not writing every day, if I miss a day or two, I'm like, man, like this weekend, I was cleaning my apartment. I'm like, I gotta write, you
You got
know?
the itch. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's roughly my process. We can break it down a bit more if you want, but that's how I approach depending on where I'm at in my life. And I think that first process will probably not be a thing anymore. I think it would be more time with me. But
Right.
it could be, if I'm working on a smaller project, I could do the word count as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I taught. third grade and fourth grade, as well as other things, but for years. And those were really like our big times of getting kids into writing. And we would kind of the structure of my lesson every day was getting kids hyped up about writing for 10 minutes. You know, I had a structure, this is what I'm going to talk about. And it was, get them all jazzed. And then it was turning on some quiet music and you just write for, depending on the age level, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But it was so interesting because I told them, you're not allowed to ask me any questions. You're not allowed to ask me how to spell a word, if this is okay. And because you just need to write, and then we'll deal with that. We'll work at that. We'll look at all of that and help, but just write. And it was so interesting how many kids, even at 8 years old, struggled with that because they wanted it to be perfect the first time because they were excited about it, so they wanted it to be great. But they would stall out every third word because they just wanted to go, Mr. Green, how do you spell? How do you spell? How do you spell? Or wanted validation rather than just being able to let it flow. And it sounds, whether you're
I
8 years old or 58 years old or 20 years old, it's almost the same.
I think kids need to know about editors. I
Right.
think kids think,
Yes.
I think they, in their mind, and I may have thought this too when I was younger, it has to be perfect because whoever you give it to is going to publish it, that way, or if, share it that way. They're not, no, they need to understand that there's other people. You're not doing this alone. The story may be yours, but you'll have help, especially if you're trying to get it published. What if it's like a newspaper, whatever? There's editors that will help you, and I think writers need to understand that editors are on your side. Some people are like, "This is my baby," I don't want anyone touching it, whatever. No, editors make your work better. So I think kids need to know that the teacher is your editor, and you can just write it down and don't worry about anything else. Just share the
Yeah.
story. We'll piece it together and make it nice and clean together.
And it's funny because I didn't really think about this until you were talking just now. So I'm writing my dissertation for my PhD right now. I'm about halfway through it. And the lady who's the chair of my committee, shout out to Becky, who I've known for a decade. She sat down with me and said, Look, I need you. I've done dozens of these. I need you to know how this is going to work. You're going to turn this into me 10 times, and I'm going to send it right back to you 10 times with edits to make. The tough part of the dissertation is not letting that defeat you, is not feeling, oh, it's perfect, and then it comes back with things that you need to edit and change time and time again. So that happens with every single person. And the hardest part of the dissertation is not the writing and the research, it's not letting that beat you down or feeling like you're just a terrible writer. And it's tough. It's tough having somebody critique your work that you think is fantastic and you're feeling all pumped and jazzed about it. But it's okay. It's okay. It's part of the whole bigger picture process.
Yeah, I think again, the more you write, the better you're going to get at it. And
Hmm.
you have to be confident with your work, and you have to understand that not everyone's going to love it. I've been doing this for a while now, and I'll look at some reviews, but there's also reviews. You're never going to have with any writer. You could be like a New York Times bestseller. You're never going to have everyone that's going to agree that it's a great book.
Right.
It's like
Right.
even bad books have fans. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So so it's one extreme or the other, but and you can't take that to heart. If you feel good about your work, like I know I'm a better writer now than I was when I first wrote the Unlikely Thru Hiker. Okay. Now I can't I can't take to even when people say it's a great piece of work you've done it. Like I know I'm better now, and I'm like, yeah, that was who I was. That's my story then. Now I have a new story that I'm sharing. And even when I move forward and write other stuff, I'll go back and say, hey, this is I love Stephen King. I learn a lot from him, and he said that when he wrote Carrie, like it's one of those books. Like some books, he doesn't remember how he wrote it. For many
Right.
reasons, he doesn't
Yeah.
remember. But there's some he didn't think it was a good piece of work. He was like his wife is the one that I think he threw the manuscript, if I remember correctly, in a wastebasket. And his wife took it out, and he was going to go back to teaching. and she grabbed it from the wastebasket and was like, "We should give this a shot." And
That's fascinating. I didn't know that. That's really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So I mean, again, I got turned down so many times when I was trying to pitch my first manuscript, but I knew that was the process. I've read and seen stories of writers just struggling, and I knew I'm stepping into something that it's going to take a while for me to get my foot in and then make something happen. Because it's been, I did the 2012. I've been writing seriously since 2012.
Right.
And it's been a while. And my book got published in 2019. So and I've been in
A long
talks.
time.
Well, I was in talks,
Yeah.
like, I think it started gaining momentum like maybe 5 years after I through hiked, because it was 2 years of writing it and then 3 years of kind of pushing it. And then I was eventually going to self-publish, and then everything just started falling into. But throughout that time, I was doing talks. I was reaching out to people, so I wasn't idle. Like, I wasn't just sitting down and waiting
Right.
to see if something could happen. I was pushing it. And now at this point, with the second book that's coming out soon, as I was writing it, there was publishers reaching out to me. So but it wasn't. It was one of those things that I worked hard for. It was nonstop hustle, and sometimes writers may lose that, where they think, okay, I finished writing this book. Either it's a masterpiece, I'm gonna get a publisher, or even if they get a publisher, they're like, okay, I'm done with it, it's published. Like, no, that's just the beginning of it. There's a process if you want to be successful. And I'm saying, not everyone wants to get published. Not everyone wants to
Of
be a published
course. Of
author.
course.
If
Yeah.
you want to just write poems and write for yourself or your family, I love that. And I think people should do that. Everyone is, like you said, everyone has a creative bone in their body. It just depends on how you approach it. You could be an artist, you can be a writer, you can be a singer, you can be an actor, and you could take it could different degrees of that. I have a goal in my life, what I want to do, and my goal is totally different than someone else that just wants to self-publish. And I would totally self-publish, and I was going to. But now that I have a publisher, then it's different. It's a bit easier going that route as well. But that being said, I know several friends that self-publish, and that process is an amazing process, and you can learn so much from going that route.
I've got a friend who will be on the podcast, hopefully in a few weeks after your episode, who self-published an AT-based children's book, but she wasn't. She was just had the goal of self-publishing the book. She has a career. She has other things. She's not looking to be a full-time writer, last I checked.
Yeah.
And so she achieved her goal, and she wrote the book and sold some copies, and it's been a wonderful thing in her life. I think she's going to write another book. I'll find out when I interview her. But yeah, it doesn't have to be. If you're
Yeah.
going to write, you don't have to be the New York Times bestseller number one. You could. Well, I sent you a picture this morning before we were on the air of a local bookstore has a monthly poetry night, and it's where local people. I'd never seen it before. I've never been. I happened to go into the bookstore when they were doing it. I don't know, maybe 15 people there. I don't know, but they write poetry and they read it there. And I think, from what I can tell, that's the end of the line for them. But that's what they want. It creates a framework of discipline that they like. They're writing and then reading their poetry in front of a small group of trusted people, and that's filling their bucket. That's giving them what they need as writers. So I love that everyone has different goals.
Yeah, it's like singing or any art, sometimes you just
Yeah,
do it just to it makes you feel good, or just
yeah.
it's better than, maybe you have a 9 to 5 job and you need something to kind of like step away from it. And for me, it was, I used to run, I used to play basketball a lot. I needed to get away from everything I was doing in New York to kind of like do this fun thing. It's just something outside of what I do every day.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I started seriously getting into writing, more so when I got my first book published, I said, No, let me backtrack a little bit. I got that published, and what really did it for me was when I was doing talks at schools and getting the reactions from students and the way I felt because I walked into this circle in their world. They didn't know who I was. Most of the time, they don't know who I am unless the teachers are teaching my book or reading my book to them, or they're reading it for the class. They don't know who I am. But
Hmm.
then when I talk to them and share my story, I see in their eyes, they're like, whoa, what is this? And they have all these questions. That feeling, like that's the best feeling in the world. And once I that started happening more and more, that's when I said, you know what? I want to do this for a living. And that means stepping away from my New York life. It's not a 9 to 5 job, it was a night job
Hmm.
in New York City. I had to step away from that and I had to make, I was making a fraction of, as far as my salary, a fraction of what I was making in New York City. But I was rich at heart, and I knew that this was something I wanted to do, and it was going to carry me for the rest of my life.
It sounds to me like, what the reason I teach is the reason you write. Like, there's the feeling I get when I sat down with an 8-year-old who maybe his or her parents had tried to teach them about addition, but it was just a cloud of frustration. And
Mhm.
then when they realize they can do it and they can do it independently, and you see their eyes light up, that gives me the feeling that maybe somebody else gets from closing a multi-million-dollar deal around the boardroom table, or anything else and a different career. And like that's why I can't imagine ever stepping away from education, because it boils down to that feeling I've got when I've taken somebody from that place of frustration or they don't know how to do something to realizing they can and empowering them and then sending them off on their way. That's it. That's what I'm looking for from my life.
Yeah, and if you
Yeah.
can find that, I think ultimately people they're scared to take that leap of faith. And
Hmm.
honestly, I didn't know I was going to end up here. I just know that I took a chance with one thing, and then it was like a domino effect where everything just started falling into place. But it didn't even start with the AT. It started me saying, I don't want to do this job anymore. And I ended up living in Italy for a year and not knowing exactly what I was going to do over there. But I had this opportunity where I can just do a few things that I was good at. Like I did some I worked at a beach bar where I did some bartending there, but I also did some carpentry in Italy. And then I realized that I like having the freedom of doing things like this that's fulfilling for me. So it started there, and then I came to back to the States, and that's when I decided I wanted an adventure where I would meet people. For me, it's all about the people and
Right.
community and I say love all the time because it's very powerful. And it just grew from there. I had a vision of what I think my life should look like, and then the universe was like, "Okay, I got you. Go. You can go reach that goal." But then the universe was like opening like so much more for me, and I was like, "Wow, it's
Right.
bigger than I anticipated." So
Right.
take these baby steps. I mean, you may have like these grand dreams, but if you take steps every single day to reach that goal, you got to be patient. That's the key. That's something I didn't
Right.
have when I was in my early 20s. But as you get older, you're like, okay, I realized that this is going to take some time. And I've been at this since 2012, and I'm still at it. I'm still working on trying
Right.
to be successful at this thing that I'm trying to pursue. So it just takes time.
So where do you sort of see yourself possibly, five is can you look 5 years, 10 years, 15 years into the future? Now, I'm sure the goalposts will move and life will happen and wonderful things will happen. But
Yeah.
where do you see yourself, in that kind of time frame?
Uh, Kind of doing the same thing I'm doing now, but at a
Yeah.
bigger scale. Uh,
Right?
and I would like to, I think my through hiking days are over as far as doing like super long distance for months.
Hmm.
I don't want to do that anymore because I have so many other projects that I want to work on, and being gone for 5 to 6 months is not good.
Right.
Now, it's not good for that. It's not gonna move the needle for me forward. on
Yeah.
myself board.
I
So,
talked to oh sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it sounds very similar. I talked to our mutual friend Akuna a couple of months ago, and like I love the idea, and maybe one day my life will be in a position where I can through hike the AT. That'd be incredible. Like that's all positive for me if that can happen. But right now in my life, I'll go and do 100 miles of the AT or another 100 mile trail, and after that week or so, I've loved every second of it. And if my life was different, I would do more. But my life has so many other wonderful, positive things in it that I want to get back to, whether it's my family or my work in education. So, yeah, going on a 6 month hike doesn't serve my life as it would for somebody else's. Maybe at some point it will. But I
Yeah.
can relate to that. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, I know a lot of hikers, and there's nothing wrong with that, that
Yeah,
every year they're through hiking. And if I want to make an impact as far as my stories and inspire people, yeah, I guess I could do it through sharing it through social media and all that, but I'm a writer. Someone asked
yeah,
me, do you vlog? And I have a friend that she vlogs, and I see how hard it is for her, the editing and all that. I don't have the passion to vlog. I have the passion to write. That's how I share
yeah.
my story, through writing. Every like we talked about, it's creative. Everyone has a story. You do it your own way. My way is writing, and in order for me to continue writing, I can't be taking these long trips. To answer your question, in 5 years, ultimately, what I would like to do is every year come out with a book. I'm gonna every year, because I'm gonna be constantly. I want to just write every day, just write. And every year, one of my favorite. And when I say a book, it could be a short story for an anthology of books, and not necessarily outdoors. I want to lean toward fiction. Eventually, I have a few stories, few ideas about that. I would love to write a screenplay for either a movie or a show. I have several ideas for that. And I'm also currently working on something that's outside of my wheelhouse that I can't really talk about, but it's something that if it's successful, which I think it will be, it could be another thing that I add to the stuff that I want to do. So I want to ultimately be a multi-genre author, and just focus on just nonstop creating, writing, sharing my stories. That's what in 5 years I want to be able to have a nice resume of work that I've done, where I don't have to worry about I'm still going to do talks, but having to do talks to pay bills. Because right now
Right.
I stepped away from New York, where I was making a good amount of money, and now the way I pay my bills is doing these talks. Writing a
Right.
book, writing a book ain't gonna make ain't gonna pay your bills.
Right.
You'll get royalties, but you're relying on enough people buying your books where you get a good amount of royalties every couple of twice a year is normally how it goes. So yeah, if I can get like 6 books under my belt, then maybe the royalties will be enough to pay my bills.
Right. Well, here's hoping. Um, before we're kind of coming around the bend to the home stretch here, and I'll have three questions that I'd like to ask you to finish this off. But before that, I feel like your life might be in a different place if it hadn't been for the support of local independent bookstores. So
Mhm.
if you wouldn't mind just touching on that and the importance of supporting, the bookstore in your community, and what could we do as consumers to make sure that these places stay healthy and stay in business?
Yeah, there was for a while, there was a thought that bookstores were going to disappear because we had ebooks. Remember when ebooks first came
I
out? People were like,
yeah,
oh, it's going to
yeah,
disappear. No, it's not like that. I've always loved bookstores. One of the things I do when I hit a small town is I'll look for the library if they have a library, and the bookstore if they have a bookstore. And I spend a lot of time in both. I think it's important because where do you want your kids to be hanging out? Where I rather I
yeah.
rather see kids, young adults, hang out at a bookstore than hanging out. I mean, they don't have them anymore, so I would be dating myself. But the mall or something like that.
Right, right.
Or where do youngins hang out nowadays? I don't even know.
We were just talking about that last night. So our kids, Kate and I we got five kids, and varying ages, but most of them are in that kind of upper teenage years, like 18, 19, up to 21. And we were discussing this yesterday because my stepson had a few friends over, just to hang out. They're all at college now, and so they're getting together. I think there was five or six of them, and this was we came home. We were out. We came home. I don't know, 6 o'clock yesterday, and they're sitting here. They're hanging out around our fireplace, having baked a cake. They're playing Uno, and I was like, Kate, do we either have really good kids, like or is this the norm, like, or is it both, or like, what's the deal here? And we kind of talked through our kids, and I think we're like every other parent. We've done some things really well, and we've struggled in other areas. Just a normal thing. But I think because we didn't make things like going out and drinking being taboo, it's not really like they don't really want to do that. They hang out here and bake cakes and play cards and play some video games. And like I do, and we thought about our kids' friends and other people we know. And it's like I think there's a trend there. Like most kids we know, upper teenage, early 20s, they're hanging out at bookstores and coffee shops, and they're not going out as much, getting wasted on a Friday night. And I've looked into it because I don't drink, and I don't believe you do either. And like, there's a huge decline in the amount of young kids again. I'm dating myself now, who are going out and drinking a lot. Like there's a movement away from that, and I think it's combined with going back and on a Friday night in a bookstore or a coffee shop. I think it's going to be full of young people.
And I think it's important. It's important for bookstores to be part of the community. For
Yeah,
instance, I'm in a small town in upstate New York, Westport, and there's the bookstore here. They do a bunch of different events. Um, we were talking about this earlier, like at
hmm
least two a week.
yeah,
Now they have a nice size space, and I have this idea that I want to talk to the owners about because there's a nice corner of their bookstore. It's in a room adjacent to the main area of the bookstore that they can just designate to students, to either high school, middle school, and they can just hang out there, either study or just hang out, just to be around each other, but they're in a safe place. I'm not
yeah.
saying they have to go there and read and study. I'm saying you're at a bookstore, you're surrounded by books, just sit there and just hang out. If you're on your phone, that's fine. I'd rather see a student or a child hang out at a bookstore on their phone than out, I don't know, the corner or whatever it is there, where the parking lot, and on their phone. Like, let's find a safe space for them. And a bookstore, a library, those are two of the safest places they could be at. So
Yeah,
that's key for. And I I feel like, because it's funny because right now bookstores are part of my world right now, because I'm promoting my new book and doing pre-sales, and I follow a lot of bookstores and see what they're doing. They're either doing readings, or Snowfort, which is the bookstore here in my town. They had something called Speakeasy, open mic, where it's just, you can just get on the stage and tell a story. It's just
I love
whatever you
that.
want. You had like 7 minutes to share a story. And I wasn't going to, because I was like, it was one of those days where I had done a lot of writing and I was exhausted. But after hearing these stories, I was like, oh, I was inspired. So they were like, does anyone else want to get it? And I know they were looking at me, and I was like, I'll go up and share a story. And I went up
Right.
there, and it just, it's one of those things that people don't know. And these are people that are sharing stories. Not a lot of them are writers, or they just out there sharing their stories. So there's so much that a bookstore can do for a community. You
Right.
get, like, students are looking for places to hang out. These teenagers are looking for places to hang out. And again, let's make the bookstore or libraries the place they're gravitating to.
Yeah, I went up to Manhattan, Kansas a few weeks ago where our daughter lives, and I needed to record. I had a podcast pre-scheduled, forgetting I was going to be up there. Um, So went to the local library. They have one library in the town square. It's a big library. But I went in there with a sort of mentality of, oh my, to reserve a room. They had study rooms that are soundproof. And I thought, I'll be able to record in there. And I sort of thought, oh, but I'm not a resident of the town. Are they going to let me do it? Will my daughter have to book it for me? You know, is it going to be a thing? I went in there and they're like, absolutely not. The more people in our building, that's what makes us happy. Don't worry about your daughter signing it. She's already got a library card. But he's like, just tell us your name so we can book it and have fun, and we hope you come back and do this again. And I looked around, and this 15-year-old, 16-year-olds, they're hanging out with books in their hands on because they've made it. It's not just a library. It's, as we've talked about, it's a community center. It's a heartbeat of where people live, and you can just touch people like that
Yeah.
in different ways. I think that's, man, it's so important.
Yeah, and there's no crazy restrictions,
Yeah,
like you need to live here.
right.
No. I this library here, they
Yeah,
didn't even ask. Normally, when you get a library card, most I guess they're being a little bit more lenient, but you need to show them proof of where you live in town or whatever.
that
Here,
was my assumption. Yeah,
yeah, here they were like, "Oh yeah, we get you a library card," and I was like, ready to like show them proof that, and they didn't ask for it. They're like, just fill this out and here's your card. And I was like, that's the way it should be. If someone wants to read a book, okay, if they want to be a member of a library, do not give them restrictions. Make it as easy as possible for them.
exactly. And how many communities around the country and the world, how many people don't have a permanent address? You know, I mean, it's,
Good point.
yeah, you know,
Good point.
yeah,
I don't
right,
have a
okay.
permanent
That's
address.
I didn't think about you. Yeah, of
I'm on the
course.
road.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm on the road, especially when I do I'm doing a writer's residency now currently from
Right.
the fall throughout the entire winter. And then I'm on a
Hmm.
doing a book tour. I don't have a permanent address. So there's not like, I have an address that I use in Alabama,
Right.
but and I may be able to use this one in New York in upstate New York while I'm on the road. But like if I want to, let's just say, like you said, you just want to use a facility, something at the library, when you cut someone off and you say, you don't have a card or whatever, I don't think, I think more, I think we're moving toward a direction that librarians are way nicer now. You know how you
Right.
think about like post office workers or like librarians are mean and
Yeah.
nuns,
Yeah.
like no. So I think it's going where they're way nicer. They want more, more students and kids coming and reading, and same with bookstores. You want
Mhm.
all types to come in and learn, and that's the key, especially in a world now that they're starting to ban books. It's right now we need to like start moving away from that and show kids all the books they could read, all the books they could read.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, shout out again to the library in Manhattan, Kansas, because when you walk in there, not only are they not banning the books, there's a massive shelf right there, front and center. When you walk in, they said, "All right, you want to ban some books? Here they are. Come check them out."
I love when they do that because here in this library here in town, they have a section where it's for banned books, and it's what was it like book week or something like that last
Yeah,
week like
yeah.
that. But they're going to keep it up, and in the bookstore Snowfort here in town, they have a section now. They have a round table with banned books, and you'd be amazed at the books that are banned. And these are books that I love and fell in love with, and it would be sad if there were, there's people that don't read it because it's banned. It's like I under
Yeah,
I don't understand it. I know their reasoning for it,
yeah,
but why why are you banning that now? Why is that wrong now? Because there's a word they used or there's something, yeah, you can give it, you can rate it like they do with movies, R rated or whatever. Maybe they should start doing that where there's a rate. It's like, hey, and
right.
they used to do that with with albums, they used to put
Oh,
like,
explicit lyrics in the corner.
yeah, or
Yeah,
whatever. Just do that, but don't go ahead and ban it. And what they're doing, it's the opposite effect. When you have that ban, people, I love it. When I go to the bookstore and I see they have a ban section, I'm like, I gravitate to it. And if I haven't read the book, I'm gonna buy it. And
absolutely.
what I saw at this one bookstore where they had bunch of shelves with banned books, and underneath it, they would have an index card that explained why it was banned. I think if
Right.
you have an explanation, especially for parents, to understand why this book is banned, then maybe, it's one of those things where a parent can make that decision and say, hey, it may be banned for whatever, but I think you're mature enough, or I can explain this to you why it's an issue, but why it isn't an issue in our household.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I always finish off my podcast by asking the guests three questions. And I'm quite excited because I think I might know the answers to at least two of the three because we know each other quite well. So I'm kind of excited to see if I get any of these
All
right.
right, I'm curious. Okay.
So the first one, I'm just going to ask you, how has your definition of success changed over the years?
Mm, okay. Success for me, I think what many people is how much money was I making?
Yeah,
Was I
right,
making enough money? And I had at one point in my life, I was making bank, okay?
right.
And I still felt like I was behind. I still felt like it wasn't satisfying enough. And I was also living in New York City where you can make bank and still be struggling.
Absolutely.
And I realized that having money in my account is important, obviously, but it wasn't what was making me happy, or I didn't feel fulfilled at all. For me, success is just having the freedom to do to be in the outdoors, to do my passion, to reach my goals. That's success for me. And have goals constantly. And my goals aren't to be rich right now. That's not because if I
Right.
wanted to be rich, I
Yeah,
wouldn't be writing books.
absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't be in education. I understand. Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, success is seeing others succeed from something I may have shared with them. And success could look in a bunch of different ways. For me, success is when I go to a school, and I talked about this earlier, and a kid gets something out of what I said, or they're inspired. They're like, "Oh, I would love to through hike, or I would love to write." That's success for me right there.
I love it. I'm going to give myself half a point because I said focusing on filling your heart and not your wallet.
Yeah, that's
Was
it.
it? That's it. All
Uh,
right. So
you,
I'll give myself the whole
I
point.
just said it. I just said it in a longer way. Like I'm the writer. I'm always coming up trying to say. Always trying to flower my words and trying to make it sound
It's
better.
the writer in you. You can't fight that. You just got to embrace it. All right. Well, no, I'll phrase this differently. What one book outside of your own has had the most influence on your life?
Damn, I got to pick one.
Yeah, I know. For you, of all my guests, this is going to be the most, you're going to have the most trouble with.
Yeah, yeah.
Or one book that if you could only read one book for the rest of your life.
Ooh,
And,
that's two different questions.
yeah, it is two different questions. You could
Okay,
go either way, go whatever
I'm
way
gonna
you
go.
want.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna answer both.
Okay.
So I would say I quote a lot this book called On Writing because it's about writing, by Stephen King, and he shares certain tips. It's part memoir and part educating about like writing, teaching how to write. And I'm always quoting that when it's a short read. But if there's one book that I can only read, if I was in a stranded island and I
Yeah.
can only read one book, I would have to go back to it's either I'm gonna have to pick one, I'm gonna have to pick two. It's either Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, uh, or the first book that got me into reading was a Stephen King book, and it was The Stand.
The
Um,
Stand. Gotcha.
and it's two different opposite like type books. One is teaches about it's very worldly, and it teaches you about like how to accept life and how to enrich yourself, like by accepting certain things and in perspective in life. which is a Viktor Frankl one. And then the Stephen King one is just such a fun read, and it's what really got me. And it's a thick read, so if I'm stuck in an island, it'll take me a while to read
Take
it,
a
and
while.
so I would say that only because it's what inspired me to become ultimately to become a writer. So those would be the two. But it's, I could have easily gone with like Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. I could have,
Okay.
I could have gone with Last of the Mohicans, which was one of my favorite classics. Like
Right.
there's so many different ones, man. I could go genre and pick one, like from each genre.
Well, you didn't mention the one that I thought you might, and that's okay because I know we
Okay.
both we both love John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie.
Yeah, that's that one
Yeah.
100%. In fact,
Yeah.
Travels with Charlie is in my top picks. I set up a display at the bookstore where, I'm doing a residency for, and Travels with Charlie is one of them. And yes, you know
Right.
what? That would be one too. You know what? Maybe I'll change my answer to that
Right.
one. You
Well, if
know,
you're like me, if I asked you this question in a month, it might change again.
it'll change.
And
Yeah,
that's the beauty of
it'll
it.
change. And that's why that was a loaded question because I can't just pick one. I
Right.
already gave you like
Yeah.
five already.
Oh, I've
So
been scribbling down all the names of the books you've mentioned to put
yeah.
on my radar. My final question of these three for you. If you could go on a 10-mile hike with anyone in the world, dead or alive, from history, from present day, somebody you know, somebody you don't know, it doesn't matter. If I don't get this question right, our friendship's over. Right? Like we're just going to tear it up and wish each other the best.
You know it. Why
I,
don't you answer it for me? You know it.
it has to be the one simple word, Prince.
Yep.
Yeah, that okay,
100%.
good. I've got that one.
100%. As soon as you said that,
Yeah,
100% it would be him. This
right,
because there's so much I can get from that guy. Like he was so like his music was like the soundtrack of my life for
right.
a while. And it grew from like, you could tell when he was younger and he was risque and he was doing, saying his lyrics were kind of like, your kids couldn't listen to it. It had one of those stickers on there. It's like,
Right.
no, parents. And then as he got older, he wouldn't sing those songs anymore because he grew and he
Yeah.
just was more spiritual. And just his songs are just so beautiful. And he played so many instruments and he was amazing with guitar. So yeah, I would love just to talk to him about his process of his career, like when he
Yeah,
started and how he grew. But I would want to talk to him, the older version of him. The younger version of him, I think you couldn't really talk to because he was just in his own world. But I think when he was in
right.
his 50s, that was when he was a bit more, not that he wasn't laid back before, but I think he was a bit more open about his career. I feel like he was so busy with his career that he was just go, go, go. But as he got older, he can reflect a bit. And that's the guy I would want to talk to.
I love it. Now, where can people find you if they've got questions about your book, about writing, about hiking? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, on Instagram, uh, Facebook, but I'm mostly on Instagram and TikTok. Those are the two main, and they can find me Derek Derek Lugo, DerrickLugo. I
Perfect.
do a live every day on TikTok at 5 p.m. Eastern. And Instagram, I'll do live once a week and just constantly posting updates on whatever adventure I'm working on and what writing project I'm doing.
I love it. Well, Derek, I'd love to have you. I was thinking have you back on again once, but maybe even twice. Like when your book is,
Yeah.
we're almost there to when it comes out, and it's actually being released. I'd love to have you back on. And then when you go on tour, maybe we'll do like a live in-person podcast when you're doing your book tour.
Yes, I'm down
Yeah,
with that. I'm going to be in your part of town, so yes, we'll do
yeah.
that.
I'm in. Well, Derek, thank you very much for spending this day with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again to this week's guest, and I hope today's episode was as enjoyable for you as it was for me, and perhaps even inspired your next adventure. If you did enjoy the show, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find more information at theoutdoorseyeducator.com or follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast.